Hi guys, now as you can see in front of me, when I was in Thailand, I purchased the LOZ series of Transformer Nanoblock style building construction sets. So I've got Optimus Prime, Megatron, Stinger, and Bumblebee. And so here you can see, just so you get an idea of how small these bricks really are, in case you haven't had an exposure to any of the miniature bricks which are currently on the market. You can see here this is the size of the brick pile, which apparently is 250 pieces. If you give an idea, your standard square and rectangle brick is there. So I'm trying to put my finger next to it. That's how small these guys are. But I don't want to spend too long just like blithering on about these. I'll build this up and then we can take a good old look at it. Alright guys, so in front of you, you can see the completed Optimus Prime model. Now the first thing to say that was very, very interesting and complicated as a build. Now this figure, you can see I've got him zoomed in so you just get an idea of how big he is in a second, was really, really challenging to build. Not so much because the actual building techniques are anything that are particularly challenging, but because of the small size of the bricks and the way they interlock and how there's a lot of very flimsy construction that doesn't strengthen up until later in the build, it makes it really, really difficult to build. And so, before I show you him in detail, I'll show you an example of how the instructions are a little bit confusing. Because, for example, here, you have this assembly here, but obviously you can't assemble this until you've assembled this, until you've assembled this. So what you end up doing is kind of building backwards in each step, which can be a little bit confusing, especially when, as you can see here, the parts that were built in the previous step automatically go white, which is really confusing when you have something like this, or something like this, where there are so many pieces on so many different levels. Having them all white makes it really difficult to distinguish where you actually need to put each individual part. And so that can make it really, really tricky. And the same thing happens here. You can see here that they've got a lot of pieces that don't join together until you put these extra little pieces on top. And so trying to arrange these and then put these on one by one, keeping all these bits in the same place, can be really challenging. Which is why, for ages 9 and up, I think it would say at least 12. And I can see that these sets are definitely designed for collectors as opposed to small children, because they're quite fiddly and do require a lot of attention to detail. Another thing that's interesting about these sets is the way that they often use, for example here, one piece, but then you can see that they've used 2 pieces in some of the steps where 1 piece could be used. A great example, if I turn over the other page, here, you can see that along this back row there are 2 3-length pieces rather than 1 6-length piece, which isn't included in the set. And so there's quite a bit of part cutting, so that, you know, they don't actually have to make extra parts and they just combine other parts. But that, of course, makes it extra fiddly because you've got more pieces you need to find and put together without it falling apart. Saying that, these blocks are tiny. Now, these are the spares. There's a lot of spares. And they are just incredibly small. As you can see, that's your 4x4, and that's my fingernail. Here we go. Forget my smartphone. It's got a 4.3-inch screen. That's like the size of a brick compared to it. You can see how small it is in my hand. But you really don't get an idea of a scale until you actually have a look at this guy. And you go, wow, he's really impressive, which he definitely is. But then you stand with the phone up next to him, and you know that that is 220 pieces worth of brick. And that is a 4.3-inch phone, and the phone is bigger and taller than this figure. And so these guys are definitely small, although amazing looking, very small and quite fiddly to put together. Now, that said, this figure I actually think is really, really nice. And so, if we come in for a bit of a close inspection, we can see that he's based off the movie designs, and in saying that, I think it's meant to be kind of the first 3 movies that we saw. So you've got, you know, the cab windows here in a transparent kind of blue colour. We've got that very kind of chunky but also layered design coming up through the short little legs. Comes up into the torso. We've got the arms with the smokestacks sticking out of them, signature smokestacks. And then we come down to these really like big, almost cartoonish fists, which I think look really cool, and then some little gun things hanging off the bottom of that. When we come up here, you can see that his head is ginormous compared to the rest of him, but that's the whole series has big heads. It's just like, you know, kind of caricatures like bobbleheads, but I think it looks really cool and allows you to capture that real essence of Optimus Prime, which I think this does really well with the kind of the nose and the little crowny bit that he has at the top, and that's meant to be that silver stripe that he has, as well as the bits that come down by the side and the signature ears. What's really cool about this guy is you actually turn him around, and there's these two little back builds here, which are meant to represent the fuel tanks on the back of Optimus Prime. So if I just grab a Prime that has those tanks on them, so this is the Movie Advanced Transformers 4 figure, which was released only in Japan. We can see that he is based off that older design, and on the back he's got these two panels here, and that is what these are meant to represent, those two diagonal panels on the back. And I think stuff like that that's in this is really, really impressive, and just shows how much attention to detail the designers were putting into this. So this as an item really, really impresses me. I think it's a great collector's piece for Transformers and Brick fans, and I think that despite its annoying sometimes build, it's very, very satisfying. That said, as I already explained, there's a couple of quirks in the instructions, but I also feel like that the piece quality on these is definitely not on par. Now, I don't have a lot of Nanoblocks in the house. I've only got 3 sets, one of which is not yet constructed, and there'll be a review on that very, very soon. But I think you can see that the pieces just aren't the same. One thing that is kind of difficult sometimes is if we look at the long pieces here, I can show you one of them, unlike Lego pieces where they're sectioned off, they're actually hollow on the inside. And this means that pieces can slide in and out. So if I get this piece here and we combine them, this can happen like this. As you can see, it just fell out because it wasn't clicked in properly. And I'll demonstrate again with a blue piece here. If I clip that in, you can see how it very easily slides up and down, which can be good if you construct it wrong. But if you construct it correctly and it slides out of place, it can be very, very frustrating. Another thing is that because of their small size, as you can see, I'm really struggling to take those two pieces apart. So if you make a misconstruction and have to go back and take things apart, it can be a bit of a hassle. And the last thing is that the brick quality, there was a lot of bricks that were damaged right out of the box. And you can see this one here, if I catch it in the light, you can see that out of the box, this one's got a little bit of dint in the corner. I'm trying to catch it in the light. You can see there's some little white lines on there. That's the plastic being warped. This one has like a bit of brown on the bottom and little chips. So a lot of the pieces aren't perfect. And you can see on some of the transparent pieces, they've actually got little kind of foggy, streaky bits on them. So the little pieces themselves aren't 100% there yet, I don't think. In saying that though, they are quite sturdy. I haven't had any problems with them bending or flexing when they shouldn't. And the connections that they make are quite tight, hence why they're so hard to pull apart. And the fact that you get this many spares is really exciting, because these kind of sets are the ones where you're going to lose pieces in construction if you don't want to build it all at once, because as I said, it did take me about an hour to build that guy. And I'm quite a fast builder normally. But it also means if you want to combine new things or with your other sets or with your Nanoblock sets, you can do that. And so that's really, really cool, and I definitely appreciate that. So overall, what do I think about this item? I think it's awesome. I definitely recommend the Optimus Prime version of these LOZ Transformer figures. The most interesting part about this, to me though, was that the Disney ones were licensed. But this one, if we turn him around, keep going around, keep going around, look on the bottom of the box, look on the top of the box, there's no licensing information here. There's no made in copyright by Hasbro or something, or Transformers even written on the box. So that makes me wonder whether this is actually an unofficial third-party figure. And if it is, I'm very, very, very impressed. So then the question becomes, does this count as a knockoff if it's not replacing an item that already exists? Does it count as a clone? Or is it simply another company coming in and using characters from the Transformers and Hasbro franchise without paying for the license? Let me know what you think about that, and whether you think that's something that is okay, because obviously Hasbro hasn't done any of this themselves, so they're not actually copying anything. But is that something you're okay with? Is that something we should be letting happen? Should I be condoning this behavior by buying these figures? You let me know what you think, and of course, let me know what you think of this model. Well, that's all I want to say about this one. If you got anything to add, as I just said, feel free to tell me what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, do all those great things that you do on YouTube. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. And as always, thanks for watching, because that's all we've got time for.